Can you hear
Hi
us?
there.
How are you doing today?
I am doing good.
Excellent. Sarah, if you want to step in front of the camera so she can see you.
Yes,
Good
my name is.
morning.
Hi there. My name is Rosemary, and I'm the one that initiated this. We've been trying to pay you all, but nobody's gotten back to us since Friday because the principal was out. She had COVID, and her little girl had COVID. But she's been trying to, she's been calling since Friday to try to pay you all, and she tried again this morning. Can somebody get a hold of us?
We'll let our group tours person, Anna Elizabeth, know that someone's trying to reach her. She might have been out on Friday too.
No,
I will send that note to her, but we are happy to move along ahead today. All right, so I can hear you, but I can't see you yet.
Yes, I'm trying to get on here to where you can see me. Can you see me?
I can.
Yes, yeah, but we are trying to pay you all. So if somebody can get a hold of us, or, we've left messages, and we'll go ahead and take care of that.
Yeah, we will certainly forward that message on to Anna Elizabeth to make sure that she gets back with y'all about that.
Yes, well, thank you, because like I said, the principal was out, and so she just got back last week, and so we've been trying to reach her. So, and the facility where we work is a juvenile facility. I don't know if you knew that. And so the kids, you can't really like see their faces, but they're going to see you, and you can, and they will talk to you.
Okay.
They will interact. And the
Okay,
teachers will ask
perfect.
questions. The teachers, you will see the teachers. You just won't see them because they're juveniles and they're adjudicated. So,
Okay.
but they're excited. They are really looking forward to it. And so, I'm excited too. So
We are as well.
This is one of my favorite parts of history. So, and I teach history, so I love history.
Good.
Yes.
Have you been to the museum before, Miss Rosemary?
What's that?
Have you been to the museum before?
No.
All
All
right.
right, well, we're glad that you're here for a virtual tour.
Yeah, because I was looking through these, looking through things, and then I saw that and I was like, oh, wow, this is really awesome, and I thought this would be a really good experience for our kids, because our kids, they're the kind of kids that like, they're nobody thinks about, nobody cares about, but yet when they're in a facility like this, they really are little sponges. They like to, they want to learn, you know what I mean? It's just that when they're out in the free, in their schools, they get left behind. And then nobody cares to bring them up to speed. But once they get in here, they really shine. So, so we're, in other words, I would never work with any other kids, but these type of kids. So we should be getting joined in pretty soon by the teachers at 10 o'clock. They will start joining in. So,
All right.
so we're on the same page, right? 10 o'clock, y'all are central also, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Where are you located?
We're located at San Marcos, the Hays County Juvenile Detention Center. We have a school within the center. So
Wonderful.
we have the principal on, Ms. Hayward.
That's what I was finding when I was Googling.
Yeah, Ms. Hayward.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Ms. Hayward. She's our principal.
All right. Good morning.
Morning.
And I told them, we talked about trying to pay them and how we haven't been able to get in touch. When they said they're gonna reach her and let her know so that she can reach us and we can pay her.
Yeah, I'm Rachel. I'm the one that you hear from behind the.
Well, I was looking like, is there somebody?
Is there somebody talking that's not Sarah? Yes.
Who is the person that is?
So I'm running the computer back here, and
Oh,
I'll
okay.
make sure I'm sharing the slides and helping out Sarah and responding to the students on the chat. But I will also send a note to Anna Elizabeth. You know, we've also had folks out on COVID too, so everything's a little upside down, but we will get it taken care of for
Yeah,
sure.
so have we. It's been quite a ride for us.
And a wicked January for sure.
Yes.
But we are delighted that we have a lot of school groups that are going to come back in person this February. So a lot of trips have not been canceled yet, fingers crossed, and we should have a lot of school kids in here.
That is awesome. Yes.
But we really love this opportunity of getting to do virtual tours. And so y'all are in Texas, is that correct?
Yes.
Right. So it's nice to get to connect with students from all across the country. When we were doing this 2 years ago, we had people from New York and Chicago and DC. And so they got to experience the Mississippi story in a way that they could not have without, you know, to have this truly be a silver lining of what we're going through.
You're right. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is really cool. So we really appreciate y'all doing this for us.
Good. Well, Sarah will explain a little bit of what we'll do over the next 40 minutes. How many students will you have joining us?
Let's see, how many do we have, Miss Hayward?
We have about 22 kids right now. And then did you kind of explain, Miss C, that we can't show their faces and
Yes,
stuff?
we already said that.
Correct.
They can see the teachers, but they can't see them. And they will talk to them through, they will talk to them through the teachers. And
have they been learning anything about civil rights history, or is this brand new material for them?
no, they know some,
Okay,
you know, about civil rights.
Mhm. Excellent.
All right, so do y'all have a specific time that y'all need to be wrapped up by? I know we're gonna start at 10. We just wanna make sure that we finish up on time for y'all.
Well, we actually have till about what, 11:30?
Okay, so we have plenty of time.
Yes, we have
Wonderful.
plenty of time, yes.
So what we're going to be doing today is I'll do the tour with them through our galleries, giving them some background into the Mississippi story, telling them about that. And then we have a video pre-recorded of one of our coworkers who is a freedom rider, that he's going to share his personal story and a little bit more about the movement here in Jackson that we'll play at the end. And that's about 20 minutes long. So we'll probably do about 30 minutes of tour, the video, and then we'll have time for questions.
Okay.
If you have any.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
I just sent the link, Miss C, on the Teams because some people forgot.
So you're gonna hook up there? Four. Yes. Yeah, you can bring them. We just wanted to start without them because that way, because they've been acting they've been acting out, so.
All right, so you're good to have them come in?
Mhm.
Okay.
I'm gonna message Weber because I can't leave the office right now. See if she can go tell Forrest. Okay.
Oh, goodness.
Cam, you're not muted.
Probably, I don't think everything with us anyways. I take care of the elders.
Wait.
I do that to Miss Sawyer. Hey.
Good morning. Miss Rosemary, just let me know when all of the other teachers have hopped on, if y'all are ready for me to get started.
Yes, ma'am.
On his way and
Oh. How's your day going, Mel?
I don't know if she can hear you.
There is
Oh, hey.
one in the meeting. One that's not in the meeting, but you can go ahead and start. She's coming. She'll be
Okay.
joining us.
All right. Well, good morning and welcome to the two Mississippi Museums. So my name is Sarah and I'm a museum educator here. And today we're going to be touring through the 5th gallery in our Mississippi Civil Rights Museum, talking about the Freedom Riders. So I'm going to have my friend Rachel pull up our PowerPoint to tell you a little bit about our building and the museums here. So as you see in this slideshow, this is our buildings here in Jackson, Mississippi. So on the left-hand side, the more white side of the building is our Museum of Mississippi History. So this is a museum that spans 15,000 years of Mississippi history. And then on the right side of the building, the darker brick, is the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum. And that's where we are right now. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see what it looks like when you come into those buildings. So if you head one way, it goes to the Museum of Mississippi History. And if you head to the other side, it's the Civil Rights Museum, where we are this morning. So I'm sure since most of you, I think all of y'all are in Texas. I don't know if any of y'all have been to Mississippi before, but if you have, we are in Jackson, which is the capital of Mississippi. And it being capital, being just about in the center of Mississippi, it is also the center of Mississippi's civil rights movement. And today our tour is focused on the Freedom Rides. So this is an event that took place in the year of 1961, starting in May and ending in December. So as we're in our 5th gallery of the Civil Rights Museum, focusing on the Freedom Rides, the gallery is called A Tremor in the Iceberg, and this is where our tour is going to take place. So how many of you students have heard of the Freedom Riders before? My teachers, if you just let me know that thumbs up if your students have heard of the Freedom Rides before. I'm seeing some thumbs. Great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So I will have a couple of questions for our students. I want to break down why we named our gallery A Tremor in the Iceberg. So what is a tremor? Do any of your students have an answer for us? What is a tremor? You can either type it in the chat to give me an answer.
Who was she talking to?
You.
All right, so Angel says when something is cut short.
Something being cut short. All right. Yeah, tremors can cut something short. What about an iceberg? What is an iceberg?
The other option is if y'all want to unmute, I think we can hear some of you too, even though we can't see you.
If we want to unmute and answer, that would be fine as well.
We want to make this as
Interactive as possible.
Angel is saying a big chunk of ice that floats and only the top shows.
Yeah, so an iceberg is exactly that, a big chunk of freshwater ice that typically is broken off from a glacier and is floating typically in the ocean. So why would we have named this gallery A Tremor in the Iceberg? Does anybody have any ideas? You can go ahead and type it in the chat, or you can unmute and answer if you have an idea. How might a tremor in the iceberg relate to the civil rights movement, particularly the Freedom Rides?
It looks like some folks are chatting. So
Yeah.
That's good. There's some conversations being had.
What? Society.
They said in society that there was a what do you call it, like an explosion in society, kind of like.
Yeah, so exactly right. So if we think of the iceberg, if we think of Mississippi as the iceberg, the South as the iceberg, and the Freedom Rides and the civil rights workers and the movement is that tremor. So tremor through the iceberg, we're trying to break the white supremacist history of the South to bring about civil rights for all American citizens, particularly African Americans during this time period. So the Freedom Riders are that tremor in the iceberg. So before we head into the gallery and get started, I want to set us some context for why the Freedom Rides are happening. So I want to ask, has anybody heard the phrase separate but equal before? We can just do another thumbs if our students are saying, yes, we've heard that term, separate but equal. Yes, I'm seeing a lot of thumbs. Yes, so the phrase was coined originally in 1896 in the Supreme Court case Plessy v. Ferguson that stated separate but equal facilities and social spaces like train cars and bathrooms was constitutional because the 14th Amendment only applied to political and civil rights. So things like voting. So it said that we could be separated socially, having separate water fountains, train cars, bathrooms, schools, and that was okay because the 14th Amendment didn't apply to things like that. So we're going to pull up our slideshow because I want to show you the case that comes after Plessy v. Ferguson is going to be Brown versus the Board of Education. So due to Plessy v. Ferguson, states began to segregate those spaces at a rapid pace, resulting in what were known as Jim Crow laws. So laws that segregated them in public spaces and specifically in schools. And technically, this was supposed to end in 1954 with the Supreme Court case Brown versus Board of Education, a case that came out of Kansas that said that separate can't be equal, that these school spaces aren't equal, and they can't be because we aren't giving them equal funding or equal resources, equal support, and there's no way to go back and even those playing fields back out. So we just need to integrate, to put all of these spaces together. So you might see on our slideshow different pictures of what life was like during this time period. You see that African-American people had to use separate entrances, separate water fountains, and you can see just particularly in that water fountain photo, just how untrue separate but equal is, because while those are separate water fountains, they aren't equal in quality at all. And so you see on that as well, the different ways that businesses would discriminate against people of color by making them come through different entrances or refusing to serve them altogether. So these are to show that Jim Crow laws were not following separate but equal. They were separate, but they were never equal. And particularly, this was impacted in schools. So if we go to the next slide, we'll see some of the buttons that are used, and we'll start heading into the gallery as we talk about 1964 and the passing of the Civil Rights Act and how we are starting to get there. So as we move in, I have a slide up talking about the Freedom Rides. So we're gonna, my friend Rachel is gonna get it up in just a second. All right, there's your overview. Yes. So as you can see on there, on our slideshow, the different pictures of the different mug shots of Freedom Riders. So we want to understand why the Freedom Rides happened. So with that context we just set up of the Jim Crow laws, of things being separate and certainly not equal, this is why people begin to protest for civil rights and why the Freedom Rides get organized. So during this time period, there are a few different organizations fighting for the equality of Black people. But has anybody heard of the Congress of Racial Equality, which was called CORE for short? Have we heard of CORE before?
Ooh, I see a few thumbs.
A few thumbs, so some of us have heard of CORE.
Yep.
All right, so the Congress of Racial Equality was created in 1942 by James Farmer and a couple of others. Farmer was the organization's first national director. Can anybody maybe name for me some other well-known civil rights activists like James Farmer? Y'all can type them in the chat or y'all can unmute to call them out.
Malcolm X.
Malcolm X.
Well, that's, my girls are going with that.
That is a good one. Malcolm X was
Oh, Martin Luther King Jr.
Yep.
Rosa Parks.
Rosa Parks. These are some great answers. And these are some great answers because they're also known nationally in the same way that James Farmer would have been known nationally.
Sarah, I'm gonna pull up his picture.
And we're putting his picture on the screen so y'all can see James Farmer, who is organizing CORE. So the Freedom Rides were inspired specifically by two Supreme Court decisions. And CORE is who's organizing them because their main mission at the time was to bring about equality for all people, regardless of race, creed, sex, age, disability, sexual orientation, religion, or ethnic background. So they are fighting for civil rights for a whole large group of people. They want American society to be equal, for all of us to treat each other equally and to have equal rights under the law and socially. And it is this group that is organizing the Freedom Rides in 1961. So they're organized in response to two Supreme Court decisions. An earlier one in 1946 called Morgan v. Virginia. And in 1960, there's another one called Boynton v. Virginia. And in both cases, the court ruled that segregation is allowed in interstate commerce. It says it's not allowed anymore because it's unconstitutional. According to constitutional law, interstate commerce is any commercial transaction that occurs over state lines. So let's break down those two words, interstate commerce. So interstate, what do we think interstate means? When we think of that, we often think of our highway systems. So you can either answer in the chat or call it out what we think interstate.
Airplanes, trains.
So from one
Airplanes and
state to
trains,
another,
yeah.
from one state to another.
From one state to another, yes. So anything that crosses state lines. So in this time period, that would in fact be our trains, planes, and buses. And when you combine that with commerce, what does commerce mean?
Buying and selling of goods.
Buying and selling of goods, perfect, great answer. So when you put those two things together, you have the buying and selling of goods happening over state lines. So this was referring directly to those planes, trains, and buses. So moving things shipping wise over those things, but particularly having to do with the transportation of people. So these planes and trains and buses have to be equal and they can't be separate anymore. They have to be fair and travel anyone. It's unconstitutional for separate but equal to keep happening. And this also includes the waiting rooms. So when you get to the airport, going through the terminal and waiting and using the bathroom, same with the bus systems. All of these things were declared in 1960 in Boynton v. Virginia that segregated facilities for those things were unconstitutional and they weren't allowed anymore. So the Freedom Riders organized to protest the fact that while Boynton v. Virginia made this unconstitutional, states weren't changing. They were still having these segregated bathrooms, these segregated waiting rooms, segregated train cars and buses. And so particularly in the southern states. So the original Freedom Rides didn't happen in 1961, but actually happened in 1947 in response to that first Supreme Court case we talked about, Morgan v. Virginia. However, that Freedom Ride only included men. So the later Freedom Rides was a fully integrated group, both African-American and white citizens and men and women. And it was in 1961 that James Farmer decided to organize these Freedom Rides in response to Boynton v. Virginia. So we're going to swing around this way and I'm going to show you a map of our Freedom Rides.
If anyone has any questions, you could type them in the chat and I'll
Yes,
share them with
please.
Sarah.
So you guys, you can see we've got this video. Oh, we lost video. Let's make sure our cords are good.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, so you see we've got this big map. And when we're talking about what's happening in the Mississippi Civil Rights Movement, what this museum covers, we also have to think about what's happening across the country as well. So while the Freedom Rides were coming into the South, they were organized originally in DC. So they're coming. The map, they have different stops that they're having at different times. There's different lines as different groups of the Freedom Riders are traveling. As you see around some of these other stops, you see these bright starbursts. These are instances of the violence that starts facing the Freedom Riders. They're starting in DC, traveling to the Deep South on Greyhound buses. How do you think they felt traveling into what they knew was unwelcome territory, as they're traveling to these places where they know other freedom riders have faced violence. How do you think the freedom riders felt? Y'all can either type it in the chat or y'all can unmute to answer.
Say loud, say loud.
I would have been scared, I imagine.
Scared? Definitely.
Yeah, they said they also said they were afraid.
Got a little feedback.
Frustrated.
Frustrated, yes, so definitely. And that shows in the way that they have decided to organize and travel through the South. They're frustrated by the way things are and the way things have continued to be. And they're starting to organize these peaceful protests to say that things have to change. They're just traveling on the buses. They're quietly sitting in the spaces that have been designated that they're not allowed in. And as they're moving through the South, they're encountering violent resistance, most notably in Anniston, Alabama, which
I'm
you
going to
see
show this
right
slide.
here. We have a slide that Rachel's going to show of the bus, where their buses were bombed by the KKK. How do you think this violence was an attempt to exert power over African Americans, exert power over the freedom riders and the things they were trying to change? I can either type in the chat or unmute to answer.
Not sure about that one. Tell us, Sarah.
So this violence is an attempt to control African Americans by bombing the buses, by beating, by sticking police dogs on them, by beating them severely, hospitalizing them, both the African American and the white freedom riders, particularly by using this violence to control them. They're trying to prevent them from continuing to fight. If they can scare them off, if they can prevent them from continuing on their journey, that is how they will continue to maintain the status quo of white supremacy in the South. So in Anniston, their bus is bombed. In Montgomery, they're beaten by mobs. And here in Jackson, Mississippi, they're all jailed. So you can't see here because you're not in the galleries with us physically, but on all of our carpets, we have arrows pointing to a jail cell that we have here in the galleries, which represents that all of the things that the Freedom Riders were doing, whether they're coming in by plane or by bus or by train, the result is the same. They're being arrested and put into the paddy wagons that you see in the slideshow and being taken to jail, both to the local county jails and most notably to Parchman Penitentiary, which was Mississippi's state prison and is to this day. So while they're in Jackson, they're sent to those county jails and the state penitentiary simply for sitting in the white only waiting areas. And they were charged with breaching of the peace, which became a very common charge given to activists arrested in the civil rights demonstrations. How would you feel to be punished for an unjust crime? Y'all can either unmute or y'all can type in the chat.
Angry.
Angry. I would certainly feel angry as well if you know that you're demonstrating for what you know to be right and you're arrested as response to that. Any other emotions we might be feeling?
They said that they would. They said they would act out.
Said we want to act out. Yeah. And that's certainly how a lot of the Freedom Riders also felt. They were deeply frustrated by the way that they were getting responded to. They didn't want to be beaten. They didn't want to go to prison, but they also knew that what they were doing was right. And so they continued to press on and they developed camaraderie between each other, as many other of the civil rights activists during this time did, knowing that if they stuck together and they protected each other, that they would eventually make progress and change. what would you do if someone invited you to join a movement like the Freedom Riders? Do we think we would want to join a movement like the Freedom Riders?
Shoot some cops.
They said that they would join.
They would join?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so we have reached a little bit of the end of our tour of this space. I want to take us around to just one more place, and then I'm going to show y'all a video of one of my coworkers who was a Freedom Rider. So we're going to swing around to show you a picture of him, and then we're going to do his video. All right, so you can see here on the wall, different mug.
Right, that's it. Got a loose connection.
To this mugshot right here of Mr. Hezekiah. Now he's going to tell you more about himself in his video, but I wanted to make sure that we saw this picture before we transitioned to the video. Before we go to the video, I want to ask if anybody has any questions, and if not, we will have time for questions after the video as well. So if anybody has any questions, y'all can either type them in the chat or y'all can unmute to ask them.
Hit it to Hezekiah.
All right, so Hezekiah is going to tell you about his story, and he's also going to tell you a little bit about other aspects of the movement that happened here in Jackson.
Good morning. My name is Hezekiah Watkins, and I'm one of the original Freedom Riders who was arrested in 1961. I'm not sure how many of you watching this morning have ever had the opportunity to meet a Freedom Rider. If you haven't, then all of you today will be able to go away and say, I met a Freedom Rider. My journey started when I was 13. Yes, 13 years old. Here in Jackson, Mississippi. Now, when I started out, I was not a Freedom Rider. I started out as a person who was curious. I was curious because of what I saw in Alabama on the national TV. I would watch TV every day just to see what was happening in Alabama. My friend and I, that was our job. We didn't know what was happening. We didn't know the mission of the Freedom Riders. Only thing that I can tell you is that we saw a group of blacks, a group of white male females being beaten, being spat on, being kicked, just being brutalized, and we couldn't understand the reason. But we knew one thing: they was together, and they was brave, much braver than my thinking. We said, man, if we ever get a chance to meet a Freedom Rider, we gonna do so. And believe it or not, about 2 weeks later, he ran to my house and he said, I heard the Freedom Riders would be in Jackson on Sunday. And man, we gotta go. So we made plans to go to the bus station. We had to tell a little lie to our parents. We had to play as though we were sick and couldn't go back to church. And we ended up at the bus station. But when we arrived at the bus station, the Freedom Riders was already arrested and taken away. So we decided to enjoy ourselves. Well, now we're 13 years of age, and we are able to do some things today. Not today, but we was able to do some things that particular day that we was unable to do in the past. Simple things like walking the sidewalk. Simple things like playing on the sidewalk. And we did those things, and we became thirsty. And there was a water fountain near, but the water fountain read white only on one side. The other side it read colored only. But we didn't care. No one was down there, we thought. So we began drinking from the white fountain because we had been told that the water from the white fountain was much colder. We was told that the water from the white fountain was better. And we wanted that colder, better water. But most importantly, we was told that that water tastes like Kool-Aid. Yep, we was Kool-Aid kids. I like Kool-Aid as we speak. So we drank water until our belly was just full, just running over. And we began to splash water on our faces and clothing just to get as much of this best Kool-Aid water we could take. And we did just that. So we head back to the bus station. And walking back to the bus station, my friend said, keep your head in front of you, but cut your eyes to the right and look over in there to see what you could see. And we couldn't see anything. So we made that trip several times up and down the sidewalk. And on that third trip, my friend, as a joke, pushed me inside of the Greyhound bus station. And after being pushed inside, I was asked 2 questions, your name and your birthplace. And just so happened, I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, just born there. But by my telling the police officer my birthplace was Milwaukee, Wisconsin, they automatically assumed that I was a freedom rider. And my journey started from there. I ended up in Parchman Prison. I also ended up on what you call death row. I had never heard death row before. I had never heard of the prison before. I'm 13 and never been out of my community. So all of this was new to me. But I was able to get an understanding of death row from the other inmates that was there. And those inmates was there because they had committed a violent crime. They had killed someone. And that put me in harm's way, per se. And I stayed there for 5 days. And those 5 days was like 5 years. I'm sorry, like 5 months. Or years as well. It was probably the most devastating time I ever had in my life. But I went on, after getting out, I went on to, let me back up a little bit if I may. When I got out, the police department here in Jackson called my mother and told her to come to the jail. And as my mom was en route to the jail, she was thinking maybe I'm going to identify his remains because they had been looking for me for several days and could not find me. So this was probably the last chapter that my mom probably was thinking. But when she came to the police department, it was a total different story. The reunion was just so great, and it was unbelievable until I got home and she gave me a good spanking, a real good spanking, and that putting it in a mild way. But I went on to be arrested thereafter 109 times. And within that 109 arrests, I had an opportunity to meet several freedom riders who came here from other states. As you can see above, they came from almost every state in the Union. And I want you to pay special attention to the number of blacks, the number of whites, the number of females and males who came here knowing that their life was on the line. They came here knowing that they could be killed, and some of them was killed. They came here knowing that they could be beaten or they could be missing. And believe it or not, to this day, some of them are still missing. So they really did not care about any of those things. They were concerned about bringing equality to every person in the state of Mississippi. And I am honored to stand here and show you those mugshots, because about 73% of those individuals that you see up there are no longer with us. They are deceased. They are gone. So we must try and keep their name, their legacy alive, knowing what they did, knowing what they believed in, and knowing how they stood the task that was before them. And it wasn't an easy task. It was a task that they took upon themselves, knowing that they could be killed at any time, knowing that they could be shot at any time. But once again, they was concerned about justice for everyone. And if we walk over on this side here, I get an opportunity to show you my mugshot. This is me here at the age of 13. Very, very naive. I was told that I was a little slow. I'm not sure whether that is true or not, but I answer to all of those. But anyway, I just wanted to make sure you got a chance to see this mugshot and also see the Greyhound bus station here where I was arrested. This Greyhound bus station is a landmark. It's not a terminal now, but the building is still there. The hound dog itself, the dog is still there, and the writing of Greyhound is still there. And it's a good memory for me in passing by and taking individuals there, showing them where the movement got started here in Jackson. And it was at the Greyhound bus station along with the Trailway. There was a bus station called the Trailway bus station that also was heavily involved with the Freedom Riders. And this group of mugshots represent the Jacksonians or Mississippians who participated within the Freedom Rides. And I'd like to bring your attention to 3 of these mugshots here, and it will be these 3 right here. I know you saw the other mugshots from the ones that came from out of state, But these three white guys here was Mississippians who had the courage to participate within the movement. And it took a lot of courage. It probably took more courage for these three than all of the Freedom Riders, because they live right here in the city or the state of Mississippi. So when they went back home, I'm not sure what happened, but they was one time arrested, and that was it. But once again, I want to thank them for what they was able to do. Thank them for their courage and their knowledge, for staying the course. And it took a lot to stay the course. And if we go around, there's a church here in Jackson, a Baptist church by the name of Parish Street Baptist Church. And this gentleman here, you can see his picture, was the pastor of this church. And you can see this dog have his arm in his mouth. That's just one of the things that we had to go through. But after this picture was taken and shown, his whole congregation came out and said, no more, we want to be part of this. So he was able to get his congregation out, and they began to do things within the community in terms of boycotting and other things. And here we have what we were referred to as the Tougaloo Nine. These 9 individuals here were students at Tougaloo College. And there's several words that I can speak to this. I'm not sure which is correct, but I'm told they had an assignment, and the book that was needed was not in the library on campus, but it was in the library, or should I say the county-owned library, the one up there. The other one I was told was that they wanted to just test the waters and see could they use the library. But this was a photo ops taken the day before. And as you see up top, that was a photo op as well that was taken by the Jackson Police Department in February the 27th, 1961. Oh, and by the way, the building is still standing. Looks just like it does now, except for maybe need a little cosmetic around the side. And, that's it. But it's still not being used. And we're still in need of maybe 2 or 3 libraries in the city of Jackson. And over here, the last one is Biloxi Beach. And I want to showcase this person here. His name is Gilbert Mason, or should I say Dr. Gilbert Mason, a medical doctor who once lived here in Jackson before moving to the Gulf Coast. And he had this ritual about him that whereas he walked this beach each morning before going to work. And one morning he was walking this beach, and this police officer here detained him and asked, why are you on this beach? And I'm told, he said, I'm just walking. And he said to Dr. Mason, well, you can't walk on this beach anymore. I don't want to see you here again. And Dr. Mason went back home and got dressed and went to his office, And I'm told that he was so nervous and upset, he could not see patients that day. So he sat down and came up with some strategy, which was a boycott, which was a protest, which was a demonstration around the beach. And he did that for quite some time before a federal injunction was filed against Biloxi and 2 other cities there. And believe it or not, they won. And in winning that injunction, this beach was open to every person who wanted to come and enjoy the beautiful sand along with the beautiful water. Once again, my name is Hezekiah Watkins. I thank you all very much for listening to me this morning. If you have any questions, if I could be of any assistance to you in any way, please get in touch with us and we'll just take it from there. Once again, thank you very much.
All right, so some of the things that Mr. Hezekiah was showing you from the different mugshots of the men arrested with him, from the Greyhound bus station and the courthouse attack at Ferris Street Baptist Church and the Tougaloo Nine and Dr. Gilbert Mason and the Biloxi Beach Wade-ins, goes to show how the Freedom Riders weren't the only ones being sent to jail, to Parchman, but all civil rights activists who were doing any form of non-violent, peaceful protest resulted in them going to jail because they were fighting for what's right, but the white supremacist power structure, the people in charge didn't want them to do these things. They didn't want to integrate these social spaces. So that's why the work of the Freedom Riders, of men and women like Mr. Hezekiah and the other individuals doing boycotts, wade-ins, sit-ins, all of those things are so important. So before we close out today, I was just wondering if any of y'all had any questions. And if y'all have any questions for Mr. Hezekiah, if y'all want to email those to me after the tour, I will make sure that he gets those answered for y'all and sent back to you. But if you have any questions for me about any of the other stuff that we've talked about today, now's the time for us to talk through them. And y'all can either put those in the chat or y'all can unmute to ask them.
How many Freedom Riders died that are known of? I don't know the answer to that, but that's a good question to ask Mr. Hezekiah. Did anyone die during the Freedom Rides?
Mm-hmm. So the question asked was how many of the Freedom Riders died during the Freedom Rides. I'm not actually sure the answer to that question, but that is certainly something that we're going to ask Mr. Hezekiah. We think that he would know the answer, and I will make sure that that gets emailed to y'all's teachers so that they can give y'all that answer. But I know one of the things that Mr. Hezekiah would say is that many of them didn't die during the Freedom Rides, but have passed away now, given how that they were adults and it's a long time ago. And so it is important to remember him and others that are still around and to listen to their stories. But I will make sure we get that answer from him. Any other questions?
I see some hands
In the chat.
Miss Rosemary is asking, where did the jail bars come from? You know, I don't know the answer to that question. I do think that they were collected from a site in Mississippi, but then fabricated to fit specifically within this jail. But it's meant to look like the Hinds County Jail.
So they're meant to look like the Hinds County Jail, which is one of the local counties that Jackson is within. But we're not certain for sure if they are from the actual Hinds County Jail or if they're fabricated to just look like the Hinds County Jail. But that is what this is meant to look like, is the local jail here in Jackson.
And it's one of the major exhibits here in the gallery, and Drew can kind of show y'all. Visitors are able to go inside of it and hear some of the oral histories from the state penitentiary. There you go.
Needs to be charged. All right, do we have any other questions?
Definitely looks like some of your teachers and students are having some conversations in the classroom, which are excellent. We hope that, you know, a visit and a tour like this encourages some new conversations. But if there aren't any from the chat or any other unmuted.
Yeah, if we don't have any other questions that we're ready to ask quite yet, we can go ahead and wrap our tour up here. But of course, y'all are always welcome to email us any other questions that y'all have. And Miss Rosemary, I will, after we wrap this up, I will be emailing you a video copy of the tour if y'all want to review back over any of this, or share it with any of our other classmates that may not have been able to join us this morning. And y'all are welcome to email us any questions, and I will make sure to get y'all the answers to the couple questions that we've talked about this morning. But I want to thank y'all for joining us all the way from Texas. We are excited to share this with y'all. And I hope that y'all have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. We appreciate it. We really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Have a great rest of your day, everyone.